You're not stuck because you're weak. You're stuck because your brain and your nervous system is wired for what is familiar. So let's change that. My name is Crystal Hoban. I'm an intuitive identity coach, and I help people stop abandoning themselves in life and love and help them to shift identities so that they can truly align with the relationships, the love, the life, the opportunities that they know they are meant for and that they are truly wanting within their lives. So today I want to talk about how to shift from an old patterned way of thinking and behaving to a new patterned way of thinking and behaving. And I think it's really important to talk about how this works neurologically and physically within the mind to truly understand this process. In the mind, when you have a certain way of thinking that you have been engaged with for probably most of your life, you've probably thought a certain way or believed something specific for a very long period of time. You have walked the same neural pathway or used the same neural pathway over and over and over again. I want you to think about this kind of like when you're walking through the woods, okay? So if you've ever been in the woods and you go to a hiking trail or a hiking path, when you go to that path, the path is very worn because so many people have walked that trail, right? It's the same kind of way that it looks within your brain and your mind. The neural pathway of choice that you've made for many years or for most of your life or over and over again becomes extremely worn. So, just like walking through a path in the woods, you can see the path very clearly. You know exactly where you're going. You can see that it is just not as grown in, right, as around it. And so, this is how it works within the brain and the mind as well. When you've consistently chosen a way of thinking or believing for a significant period of time, the neural pathway becomes very, very worn. If you want to make a new choice, that pathway, that new neural pathway, is going to be kind of like a deer path or a deer trail when you're in the woods. So, if you've ever looked off a trail walking through the woods and you see that something definitely ran through there, but it's grown in, right? It's not as prominent as the trail that you're on, that would be the example of what it's like to create a new neural pathway of choice within the brain and the mind. Okay. It takes you being able to recognize that the new path that you want to take is going to take a lot of you walking it for you to be able to make it prominent and to be able to make it something that you consistently can see, right? When you're first walking that path, you might go off the path sometimes. You might not fully see where the path is. And that's kind of what it's like as you are shifting and choosing a new neural pathway of choice within your mind, or a new way of thinking, or a new way of behaving, or a new way of believing. And anytime you are doing this deeper work where you are shifting beliefs, you are changing the way that you're thinking, you're changing the way that you move through the world, you're changing the way that you're behaving, you are shifting identities. This is exactly what I mean when I say that I help people shift identities, because for you to be able to shift identities, you have to be able to do the inner work first to align with the identity that it is that you want to become. And that takes belief work, that takes understanding what you need to do to be able to do that. When you have walked this path over and over and over again, it becomes very easy to take. You know the path like the back of your hands. It's kind of like when you drive to work or you're driving somewhere you've been before. Sometimes you go on autopilot, right? And you don't even realize that you've gotten to where you're going, or you forgot how you even got there. That's like the autopilot that happens. And this also happens when it comes to the way that we choose to think about things. When we've thought about things the same way over and over and over again, and we've consistently believed something to be true, it's kind of automatic and it becomes very easy. And if you've ever been like laying in your bed or sitting somewhere and realizing, oh my gosh, I've been in my mind thinking and worrying about this thing for the past hours or whatever it may be, that's an example of how this becomes so automatic that you don't even realize that you're doing it. So walking this path becomes so much easier. It's known. You know how to get there. You know where you're going. And it's hard to stop and be intentional to choose this new path. And as you want to make that shift from thinking one way to thinking a different way, you have to recognize that there's a part of you that needs to be able to be intentional. You need to be able to slow down enough to recognize that you're engaging in the old pattern and you actually want to shift that to the different way of thinking. And for you to stop and respond rather than automatically react, which is what you've been doing for so long without realizing, is you have to be able to regulate your nervous system. You have to be able to recognize that I am thinking in the way that I don't want to think anymore. I need to stop and I need to intentionally choose something different. And so there's absolutely a regulation of nervous system that needs to happen here for you to successfully be able to choose a different way of thinking. We often react without realizing, and that is the automatic way of moving through the world that so many of us do, where we've just been doing it for so long. It's not even something we think about anymore. It's just a way that we move. And being able to go from automatic to stop and slowing down and being intentional and making a shift, this is where a lot of the deeper work happens. And this is exactly what I do with clients in coaching, is I help them to regulate their nervous system so that they can truly shift that thought pattern. The other thing that needs to shift when you are choosing to move from one thought pattern to another is the beliefs. There are certain beliefs that you have that are keeping you stuck in this way of thinking. Because if you wanted to shift that way of thinking, if you just wanted to make a choice to do that, don't you think you would have done it already? There's certain beliefs and certain fears. May that be beliefs you have about yourself. May that be beliefs you have about the world. May that be beliefs that you have about whatever it is that you're thinking about, right? Those beliefs need to be derooted and those fears need to be faced for you to be able to actually make that shift as well. And so this is the work that I do with clients to help them to understand what the underlying fear is, where it comes from, and how to unroot that so that we can shift. If you're stuck in a certain way of thinking, it's probably because there's certain beliefs that you have underneath that way of thinking that you have not brought to your awareness yet, or that you have not challenged yet. And until you challenge those beliefs and see them and you're aware of them, you can't actually shift them. So that's another way that we really get stuck in this negative thought pattern way of thinking that I feel like is really misunderstood. Now, I have a couple examples here. I have the first one, which would be a negative thought pattern or a survival thought pattern, right? That sounds like, what if they don't like me? And then kind of getting stuck on that hamster wheel of all the thoughts about that and all the ways that could happen, right? That's kind of like what the negative thought pattern sounds like or looks like. What if they don't like me? Now, if you chose a more positive thought pattern, that could sound like, what if they love me? Right? And what I want you to recognize is the difference between these two thoughts. One is fear based, a fear of rejection, a fear of abandonment, a fear of not being liked, a fear that I'm not good enough, for being honest. And on the other side, the positive thought is, what if they love me? So the jump to get from that negative thought pattern to that positive thought pattern in this specific example would be confidence. You would need unshakable confidence to believe in that in yourself. You would need self-trust to be able to believe that and believe that to be true. You would need to be able to deroot those fears of rejection, those fears of not being liked, right? Those fears of I'm not good enough. What are people going to think? To be able to make that leap. So the next example I have is, what if I mess up? And this is one that keeps a lot of people stuck. It's this fear of being seen as imperfect, being seen as human, being seen as less than what you want to be seen as, right? Trying to control the narrative of how other people see you. And that will send you down a hamster wheel forever. But the other side of this is, what if I learn? Now, what do you need to be able to make that jump? You need to be able to recognize that a part of you has to be okay with making mistakes, which means you have to heal the shame and the guilt that you feel around being imperfect or messing up or being human. And that actually is a big place where people get stuck and feel unable to be authentic or true to themselves. Those are probably some of the bigger fears that keep people stuck on this hamster wheel. And then the last example I have is, what if I fail? And my favorite, but darling, what if you fly? Again, we're talking about a need to be able to feel confident, a self-trust that you need to embody and be within yourself to be able to make that shift. A belief in yourself that is so unshakable that nothing can move you from it. And so there is a nervous system component. There's an understanding of the beliefs and the fears that are reinforcing this way of thinking that you have to deroot to be able to shift this. And what this really breaks down into is, you know, they talk about, you hear nervous system being talked about a lot, where it's like deep breathing and all of those things. And yes, that is a component of the nervous system that does need to be regulated and worked through. And those skills are useful and do help. They're a piece of it. The other aspect of this is understanding that it's the way you're talking to yourself. Because even think about it. When you are saying things to yourself from this negative thought pattern of, what if I fail? Do you hear, like, think about that to yourself. Do you feel your body contract? Do you feel the pressure in your chest? If you said that out loud to yourself, or even just hearing me say that to you, do you feel your body get tight? But when you say the other thing, but what if I fly? What if I succeed beyond my wildest dreams? Do you feel the openness in your body and the expression? That also has to do with nervous system regulation too. It's all about how you're talking to yourself as well. And as you continue to feed this new neural pathway of choice, this new identity that you're walking into, the other identity, the other pathway that you used to walk will start to splice. That's what they call it in neuro. It will start to break down, where the pathway that you're walking on a regular basis, the identity you're shifting into, become very, very worn. And the other path will start to grow in. The other path will start to become less visible. And it's the same exact way in how it works in your brain. And this is why consistency is important. This is why showing up consistently over and over and over again in practice makes perfect. Because as you continue to do that, you are actually diminishing the other choice that you used to make. You're diminishing that old way of thinking, and you're walking the path less traveled, which will become the path most traveled by you. And that's exactly how this kind of shifts and happens neurologically within the mind as well, which is why it's so hard to shift and why people feel so stuck, because there's an automatic space that you've been in that you have to be able to regulate and shift yourself out of to be able to make that new choice and shift identities successfully. So this is exactly what I do with my clients in coaching. And if this resonates with you, you can find out more information about this at crystalclearmystic.com. But I just want you to know that you deserve to heal. You deserve to have faith and trust and confidence in yourself. And this is the process that gets you to that point.